We'll now transition to the next block, which focuses on early detection, data, and digital innovation. The discussion will address how artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, and digital technologies are transforming cardiovascular health, and how these innovations can be integrated responsibly into healthcare systems. We will begin with a short introductory presentation by Xiaoxi, another fellow on the co-fund Cure Heart and Brain program at the CNIC.
Cardiovascular disease remains the leading cause of death worldwide. In the European Union alone, around 62 million people are affected, and near 1.7 million lives are lost each year. Its economic burden exceeds more than 200 million euro each year. Fortunately, most cardiovascular diseases are preventable if the risk factors are identified early, like hypertension and obesity. So the key challenge is not only treating the disease, but detecting risk factors before irreversible damage occurs. To improve the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease, large amounts, unprecedented amounts of data are generated, like including multi-omics data sets, EHR, and diverse clinical data sets. Although large amounts of data are becoming available, most data remain fragmented across different institutions, regions, and countries. So different institutions store and organize data independently, making integration difficult. Therefore, the major barrier is interoperability. Most data originate from heterogeneous sources with different formats, standards, and algorithms. Limited connectivity between systems further hampers large-scale integration and collaboration. Artificial intelligence was first proposed in 1956. Its recent rapid progress has been driven by the explosive growth of data. Large-scale datasets enable AI models to learn more complex disease patterns. So AI can integrate data more effectively. It can identify subtle patterns in cardiovascular disease that are often undetectable using traditional approaches. AI models have shown strong potential for cardiovascular disease risk pattern prediction. In addition, AI enables personalized prevention. Instead of using one general approach for all patients, AI can help tailor prevention and treatment based on an individual's clinical characteristics, genetic profile, and lifestyle. Now, many digital technologies tools are already widely used in our life, like electronic health record, cardiac imaging, and wearable electronic devices. These technologies support continuous monitoring, early detection, and more efficient clinical management. However, the implementation remains highly uneven across Europe. Some countries have advanced digital infrastructure, where others still face significant limitation in technology adoption, data integration, and digital access. So what is limiting access to the data? Problems include incompatible data formats, isolated legacy system, and strict regulatory requirements. These issues slow down collaboration and limit innovation. To solve this problem and support digital health development, European regulatory frameworks are evolving rapidly. Policymakers working to balance innovation with ethical standards, privacy protection, and responsible data governance. The European health data space is the first common European data space. Its aim to strengthen interoperability, enhance secure data sharing, and support collaborative healthcare research across all member states. The European health data space is not the only example. Many other data spaces across European Union further illustrate how integrated data ecosystem can support more effectively AI-driven healthcare planning and innovation. Strong coordination across all member states will be essential. Harmonized standards, policies, and infrastructure will be essential to ensure effective collaboration and equitable access across Europe. Beyond coordination among member states, progress will also depend on collaboration among researchers, policymakers, industry, and the health society. Each stakeholder plays an important role in building trustworthy digital health ecosystem. Europe also needs resilient and secure infrastructure capable of supporting large-scale AI application. Stronger computational system, cloud platform, and secure data environment will be essential for future digital healthcare development. Ultimately, data remain at the core of this transformation. However, the goal is not simply to collect more data, but to harness it more effectively to enable better prevention, early diagnosis, and improve patients' outcome. Successful implementation depends on transparent governance, strong ethical safeguard, and public trust. Coordinated policy action will also be essential to unlock the full potential of AI and health data. A tool's true potential is determined by the person who uses it. So it's time to work together and make it better. Your hearts matter. Let's keep it safe. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Xiaoxi. I would now like to invite the moderator and panelists to join us. Moderating the session is co-fund Cure Heart and Brain Fellow Hana Matuskova.
Welcome everyone to the panel Early Detection Data and Digital Innovation. Today we are bringing experts working across artificial intelligence, data governance, computational biomedicine, digital innovation, and European AI policy. And we are delighted to welcome Professor Folkert Asselbergs, Chair Amsterdam Heart Center, Professor at the University College London and University of Amsterdam, Chair AI European Society of Cardiology, Dr. Aleida Alcaide, Director General of Artificial Intelligence at the Spanish Ministry for Digital Transformation and Public Service, Dr. Laura Dubreuil Vall, Director, Emerging Technology Innovation, AstraZeneca, and Dr. Fátima Sánchez Cabo, Head of Computational System Biomedicine Unit and Bioinformatics Unit at the Spanish National Center for Cardiovascular Research. Together, we will discuss how Europe can ensure responsible, scalable, and trustworthy deployment of AI and health data innovation in cardiovascular healthcare. So let's begin with the first question to all of our panelists. Europe is investing heavily in digital health, AI, and health data infrastructures. In your view, what's currently the main challenge preventing responsible and scalable AI deployment in cardiovascular healthcare? So, Professor Asselbergs.
Do you want me to kick off? So, thanks for being here. Looking forward to the discussion. So, and as the speaker just mentioned, I think at the end of the day, it's with AI and digital, it's data. It's data, and it's data, right? It's the access to data, right? And interoperability. Everybody who is a clinician here, but also in research, it's all siloed, it's all fragmented, and there's no connection. So we have great AI possibilities, but of course, if you have a single platform, if you look at Meta, or you have WhatsApp, or you have Facebook, or whatever, Instagram, it's quite easy. Also in cardiology, if you have an MRI or ECG, you have a single platform, then AI works excellent. But of course, as clinicians, we work in multiple sources, right? We have an EHR system, an ECG, an MRI, and we want to connect those, and that's not feasible at this stage, right? It's due to the interoperability, but also the governance, right? In the European Union, we have GDPR, which is great, I think, and the AI Act, it's great, but limits ourselves as well. And the final thing, so after the free data and the regulation, it's also bias, right? It's just the Safe Heart Plan. You have to realize, I think it's mentioned this morning, it was initiated especially by the Eastern European countries. It's like it started with Hungary, and later on it was adopted by Poland, and later on Cyprus. Because there, the burden of cardiovascular disease is predominantly in those countries, Eastern Europe countries. But there, the landscape is even more fragmented from a data perspective, and we have to realize that the models that we're building are predominantly from North and Western countries, or from the US. The question is how easily are they adaptable, right, to other types of like contexts of healthcare systems. So data, governance, and I think bias. That's really what's the responsible AI limitations.
Yeah, I think just to build upon that, I think that the actual problem is not the AI models themselves, but the combination of fragmented data ecosystems, the implementation capacity, which is not equally distributed, and also going back to that point, the lack of enough representative real-world data, right? And as a neuroscientist, I worked extensively with different neurotechnologies and AI medical devices, and one lesson from that field is that an AI system is just as good as, only as good as the populations and the data that you use to train the model, right? So if that is not representative enough of your populations, that the eventual solution is going to be biased. In that sense, and specifically in cardiovascular health, that can also become a major problem because the risk factors, disease presentation, etc., that can also be different across populations, right? In that sense, I think that Europe is well positioned to contribute to that field because we have initiatives like the European Health Data Space, which can actually enable these cross-border interoperable data sets that are more representative. But again, I think that infrastructure is not enough. I think that we also need trust, governance, and we all need that clinicians, industry, academia, regulators, policymakers, they all need to have confidence in that AI systems are well governed. And that they are actually solving actual problems, not just adding technological complexity, right? So I think that responsible AI deployment is not just about technological complexity, but also it's a system challenge that requires governance, good governance, trust, and responsible implementation.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I was going to say, of course, data. I think that the health sector is going to benefit a lot from the use of AI because it has a lot of data, as we have also in the public administration. The issue here with data is, of course, it has not to be biased and it has to be representative of the population, as you said. But we also have to have into account some controls we have to add when we are using AI systems, and that's why we have now the AI Act. The idea of the AI Act, yes, is to add some requirements to health systems and also some other sector systems in which we have to have into account that there can be some problems that we didn't have into account before, for example, with the medical devices regulation. I'm thinking about cybersecurity measures. For example, we can have data poisoning of our systems. That's something that we didn't see when we have the medical devices regulation. So that's why the AI Act is including this new dimension of data. But when we're talking about data, we are thinking always most in an AI traditional system, what we call traditional AI. But when we think about generative AI, we have to take into account other dimensions, not only just the data we use. We have to take into account that the system should have at least the level of a graduate in medicine or more, depending on the specialist it has. So for this, we need to train with literature. But a lot of this literature is protected by intellectual property rights, and this is a problem. We have to collaborate with the societies, with the European Society of Cardiology, for example, here in this matter, to have this type of systems that have some basis of medicine, and then it can learn with data. Of course, data at this moment has to be anonymized, except when we want to improve the bias of the data. Because the new omnibus on AI, the rule that's going to change the regulation on AI, it's going to be published quite soon because we approved it like 1 month ago, just allows to use personal data to train systems just to reduce the bias. So I think we are improving a lot of things. Of course, there's these things of fragmentation, but we are on the way to have these possibilities and to have systems that are useful for doctors and for the society to be used. But I think that there is needed this strong collaboration among everyone. I mean, societies, but also doctors and, of course, the public administration.
Yeah. So actually, I agree with all the rest of the panelists. I think we are confronting this paradox of data wealth, but very fragmented and sometimes difficult to share across borders. Even within the same country, sometimes it's difficult to share the data. The European health data space, of course, has been mentioned now. I also acknowledge the first talk in the morning by Kitty talking about policy. This is so far policy. Of course, sanctions will come in the near future, actually. Let's see if we are able to put all this data together, because AI needs a lot of data, but this data has to be harmonized and readily available to really be useful for AI. I also want to bring another topic where maybe I sometimes feel the European Union is falling a little bit behind, that is more robotics. This morning we talked about devices in the previous panel, and I think this is extremely important. We are at the moment very much focusing in algorithms, but this has to go hand by hand with the development of devices where we put these algorithms. And this is sometimes I feel in the European Union we are talking less about this topic and very much about algorithmics. So maybe this is something that we also have to keep in mind, because this is going to be essential. That's another thing that I think is super important, to bring really the developments to the bedside, not this whole process from the bench to the bedside. This is essential. If we as scientists are building tools that are very, very nice with very high accuracy and performance metrics, but that are really not dealing with an actual clinical need, all these developments are going to be useless. I think we are in the right way. Of course, the European Union is putting all these pieces together. We as a scientific community with the rest of the stakeholders, events like this, I think, are a great example of what needs to be done. We are in the good way, but there are still a lot of things that we need to improve.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts. So I would now like to address more specific question to each of you. So let's start with Professor Asselbergs. What kind of evidence framework is needed for the guideline grading of AI algorithms in cardiovascular medicine?
Yeah, that's a great question, because people have to realize that nowadays, so for drugs, we have a clear path, right? Where everybody knows clinical trials, everybody knows how to review them. We have the big RCTs. But within AI, we have in the European Union, we have the MDR, we have regulation, but it's predominantly just focusing on, okay, is the algorithm doing what it's supposed to be doing? But it doesn't tell you anything, what's the clinical, right, added value. So I think there's a clear need from the professional societies, together with EMA, but also we're discussing now the FDA and also with other regulators. So what's the threshold to be adopted by the guidelines, right? So what of evidence is needed? And I think it's multifactorial. We need to educate our stakeholders as well how to read the evidence, for example, right? So we're planning as European Society of Cardiology in our curriculum for digital cardiology and AI, like for the basic core curriculum, but also we have a master program that we're going to launch next year to make sure that people understand the evidence, right? Because now there's a big tech push, but there's no, right, we're just adopting without really having the evidence to substantiate it. Because AI, it's like not a point solution like a drug, right? It really depends on the context in your pathway where you're going to add, right, the AI solution, whether it's at the beginning, whether it's at the end. Everybody knows in your electronic health record, it really depends where the AI is adopted. So what we're trying to do as European Society of Cardiology, we're trying to present in Munich at the EEC a new evidence grading specifically for AI algorithms. But it's quite difficult because you need a different kind of trials. So you cannot do like an RCT for 4 years, right, and 10,000 people, because AI is moving that quickly. If we wait 4 years, right, the entire landscape will be different. So we need like more pragmatic rapid cycle trials embedded within routine care, but that demands infrastructure. So that's something that we are planning to do in the EU Safe Hearts plan, is that we build a network across Europe where we can do this type of trials, where we can actually show efficacy of AI implementation. And we're trying to use the same levels of grading, but it really depends the levels of grading. So if it affects outcome, it will be a bit similar as the drug trials, but there's also a lot of in workflow optimization. And of course, you don't need like long-term trials for cardiac segmentation, for example, in MRI, right? So using AI or AI ECG to detect, I think that will be more easy. So we will all have different pathways depending on the level of risk of the AI tool itself. But it's really important topic, and it's not there yet, right? So we're investing heavily in this, and you have to realize it's not there. And I just want to emphasize that tech and startups are pushing us, right, to adopt this, but we really have to push back, right? It's just that that they invest as well in clinical evidence, right? Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, we lose the social license of the community, because people will not look at the tech companies. They don't look at the startup. They will look at us as clinicians in front of them. So I think that's really our responsibility as researchers and clinicians to make sure that we adopt this responsibly, and we have to set a framework, right, for evidence generation.
Yeah, thank you. So let's continue. Dr. Dubreuil, are healthcare systems prepared for the convergence of AI with emerging technologies such as robotics, neurotechnologies, quantum computing, or digital wearables?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that you're pointing to a very important trend here, and she also mentioned that. I think it's not just AI that is going to transform all the industry, but rather the convergence of AI with other technologies like robotics, quantum computing, neurotechnologies, wearables, etc. Right? So wearables, we all know them, they are already here, and they are allowing us to monitor patients outside of the hospital, and that allows us to move away from reactive treatments to prevention, early intervention, etc. But things like robotics, they are still developing, and I think that they will allow us to address workforce pressures by improving clinical workflows, enabling remote care, rehabilitation, etc. Things like neurotechnologies are still a bit far from now, but they will enable new forms of human-AI interactions that will, improve the different bottlenecks that we currently have right now. And they will also enable new insights about the neural mechanisms that influence cardiovascular function, right? Because it has been proven that there is a link between these two. And that, of course, will transform the whole field. And finally, we all know that quantum computing has a huge potential to transform areas like drug discovery, biological modeling, very highly complex problems around different data sets. And that will definitely have a huge impact in not just in healthcare, but in all the industries, right? So for me, the question is, going back to this question about, are we prepared for that? Well, I think we are in a very early stage, right? We are still organized around siloed workflows, very traditional care models, validation models that are built around very static technologies, not continuously AI evolving systems, right? Again, I think that Europe is approaching this from the right perspective of adding trust and adding ethical and good governance to that, but we are still at a very early stage. And for me, eventually, it's not a question about are we prepared from the technological perspective, but are we prepared organizationally and culturally, and we have to change that. We have to generate new ways to generate evidence. We have to generate new governance frameworks, train the workforce, make sure that we all have like critical thinking about the outcomes of AI models and the different technologies that are coming, and not just believe in the new hype and the new shiny toy that we saw on the TV or Instagram or whatever. So there's a long way to go, but I think we are going there.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Alcaide, how can Europe guarantee AI strategic autonomy in healthcare, including sovereignty over data and infrastructure, reduction of vendor lock-in, and alignment with European values and regulatory frameworks?
Yeah, in this regard, the European Commission during the last years has followed like a very defensive approach to all what we call the digital policies, just doing laws to, of course, to establish controls, to think about in a citizen-centric policies in which we defend rights and we just control how the technology is used. I think that this had very good results. We have the medical devices regulations that establishes a trust ecosystem here in Europe to use systems. For example, in the last days, I knew that the Spanish Medical College has published a guideline in which they introduced this idea of like a technological conscious objection for doctors not to use AI if they don't are completely sure that what they're using is trustful. So I think this is something that in Europe we are quite protected because we have laws. We have this medical devices regulation, in vitro devices regulation, and we have also now the AI Act that introduces new requirements when we add AI in software or in general in devices used in the health sector, in all the sectors. But we have changed a little bit now, and I think that now we're doing it very well in the idea that we are trying to develop policies focused on have this sovereignty. I don't like to say so much that we have a completely autonomous strategy because we are going to depend of other countries, that is for sure. But we are focused now to do a lot of investments to have our own infrastructures. And some of the initiatives we are involved as General Directorate, also, of course, with Europe, because we cannot go alone. I mean, in this type of issues, we cannot go alone as country. It's, I would say, like in 4 pillars. We are working like in 4 pillars. First of all, I would say this, that we are investing in infrastructure. We lose the train of cloud computing, and a lot of systems require a lot of data, and data has to be somehow, somewhere. So the cloud was, I mean, we know that the big enterprises in cloud computing are now from other countries, but we cannot miss now the trend of to have this, our own infrastructure for AI. We want to know where our data is being processed. For example, when we say something to an AI model about our health and we give them data that is quite sensitive, we really don't know where it is when we don't know where the model is working. So this is a main point we have to take into account. And at this moment, the big commercial moments are processing data in the States and not here in Europe. So our first initiative is to invest in infrastructure. Maybe you have listened about that, is the Gigafactory initiative, in which we will have different AI gigafactories in different countries, just to have our own infrastructure to develop AI. So there will be like an investment of 200 billion euros, both public and private investments, and we think this is an initiative that was not made during the cloud phase, and we are doing it now with the AI. Secondly, it's not only to have infrastructure, but we need to have a vibrant ecosystem, an industrial ecosystem that develops solutions. And for that, of course, we have the big companies, as you are in AstraZeneca, but of course, we need startups that give a lot of ideas on where AI can be used and how data can be used, and also to improve citizens' lives. So for that, we have another initiative that we call AI factories. In this initiative, what we do is just to deploy in the supercomputing centers that we already have in different countries in the member states. In Europe, for example, here in Spain, we have the Barcelona Supercomputing Center that will have an AI factory. Also, the Regional Supercomputing Center of Galicia that will have another AI factory focused on health, in which the idea is to provide computing capacity freely, completely free, to small and medium enterprises. Instead of going and develop their solutions in big cloud companies that are outside of Europe, they can do it freely here in Spanish soil, thanks to this initiative. This initiative is not just to provide compute. There is a lot of necessity of computing capacity to develop AI, but it will provide also data, because these centers will develop what we call the data labs, in which there will be data that can be donored by different organizations, but of course we can generate also synthetic data. And we also will give services as for the public to use AIs. For example, we have what we call the sectoral hubs, in which one of them is the health sector. We will have a workshop now in the 11th of June in different sectors to make this joint among the users and also companies that can develop solutions for them. This is around the AI factories, because the AI factories' idea is to have this ecosystem to develop solutions and to develop technologies. We have Silicon Valley. I mean, we have to think about this type of things also here in Europe and, of course, in Spain. It's our country. Thirdly, we need to make trust. We need to make trust. If we don't have trust, as I said before, then nothing is being used. So we need to have this trust. And for that, we have the regulation. We are working to have this safety part for a doctor to know that what they are using is useful. But of course, they cannot use these things alone. They need a governance, and we need to have these different ministers of health in different regions to know exactly what solutions are to prescribe them in a very safety way. And last but not least, and you already said it before, is that to avoid the vendor lock-in, we need standards. That's for sure. And for that, we have the Data Act. The idea of the Data Act that relies on the Data Act is to offer the possibility to have portability of data from one platform to another. I know this regulation has been a lot of criticized because, of course, vendor lock-in is quite interesting for some companies, but we have to be the ones who are proprietary of our own data, and we can move it from one side to another. And in Europe, this is compulsory. So, and for that, we're working in a lot of standards to do this possible. So at the end, sovereignty and autonomous strategy, it's just not infrastructure, but it's also to have this data now with the European data space. We will try to have all the data centralized in one platform. I think that's quite necessary, but we will have also some rules to make this possible.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Sánchez, Cabo, is AI explainability essential for the deployment of AI systems in healthcare, or how far are we from truly autonomous AI system in cardiovascular care?
Okay, I will go first with the first question. So the short answer is yes, and the long answer is also yes. We, of course, need explainable AI. We many times believe that this is to build trust, but I think it goes beyond that. We cannot just go to the medical doctors, we cannot go to the patients and just say, your risk is 80% of having a cardiovascular event in 10 years. We need to go to the causes of that. We need to transform all this data into actionable findings, something that we can work with. This has been a little bit a problem with genetic testing for many years. Okay, you have an increased risk of whatever disease, but we don't really know what to do with that. AI has to go beyond this point of prediction to make also explainable, actionable insights. And about how autonomous we are, I think we are at the same time very far and very close to autonomous systems. I would say in technological development, like for instance, imaging, automatic imaging, I think we are quite close to autonomous tools. However, in this kind of tools I was describing, like decision-making aids for the cardiologists, I think we are yet quite far from there. We need to work much harder, and these tools are always going to be kind of help for the cardiologist in the loop. They are, I don't think, ever going to substitute a cardiologist. In all this line, for instance, all the work in digital twins has been very, very important. This is also one strong pillar in the European Union right now. We have to be working on this to bring together these two things, explainability and also systems that are as automatic as possible, always with the aid of cardiologists.
Thank you. So now I would like to conclude this session with one final question, again, to all of our panelists. So what recommendation would you give to young scientists who want to work at the intersection of cardiovascular science, artificial intelligence, digital innovation, and real-world healthcare implementation in Europe? So who would like to start?
You want me to kick off again? Sure. So that's a broad question. I think it was addressed already in a previous talk. I think you should work interdisciplinary, right? So I think the traditional doctor will not exist in the future. I think so in Amsterdam, what we're trying to do is diversify our medical staff, for example. So it's not only having cardiologists, traditional ones, but also have technical physicians, but also software engineers, and not as a supporting role, but actual in a leading role. So what we're trying to do now is in the next 5 to 10 years, we try to shift and diversify our workforce and make them equal partners. So now it's often that there's an IT or a software engineer that helps out the physicians, but there have to be equal partners. Within, I think, the interventional suites, for example, they are more and more important. Because I do think that cardiologists can be replaced, right, for a majority of the work. I think we didn't have the discussion today, but I think we're always looking at the complex cases, right, the decision making, and I think there are still cardiologists needed. But I think in the low complex, right, repetitive automatic task, I think the cardiologist can be replaced. You have to realize that a lot of what we do, like 50% of our work is admin. A lot of our work of our residents is just looking at ECGs or echoes from primary care or referrals, which are normal. I think this type of work can be replaced by AI, but that's about governance, it's about liability, it's about budget as well. So that's, I think, a discussion that we need to have so that we as high-end professionals can focus on the complex care of patients. But for young people, diversify yourself, right? So don't be ignorant regarding what's there, right? The AI is not the future, AI is here, digitalization is here, so you have to equip yourself, I think, in AI, so do a master, do a study itself, right? Myself, I've done a master in health economics at the London School of Economics as part of the European side of cardiology. You have to make sure that you understand the language of policy making. As Hector mentioned, the impact is not in papers anymore. It's not in grant funding anymore, right? The traditional metrics are going out. So if you look in London, but also in Amsterdam, where I work, we look at portfolios, and papers are just a single item, right? Funding is a single item, but it's more about leadership. It's about impact. It's about guidelines. It's about policy making. It's about leadership. So we have a much more holistic approach in tenure young people. So you have to realize that and diversify yourself, and I think rightfully so, right? We were too narrow. So broaden your scope.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely agree with that. And I also want to say that I think it's important to fall in love with the problem, not the solution or the technology. We all really like a lot, all these shiny new AI models, and we want to just try the latest one. But if it doesn't solve any real problem and any real need, then it's just useless, right? And maybe you can just use a simpler tool that is not AI-based, but it actually solves something meaningful. Second of all, I think it's important to develop the ability to work across disciplines. You need to have a deep expertise in your own field, but again, you need to be able to understand and speak the language of other disciplines like biology, engineering, policymaking, anything around industry, academia, etc., and connect the dots around them. Third of all, I think it's important to stay close to the real world and understand the pain points of clinicians, patients, healthcare systems, and not just focus on your own siloed research and publications. That's not the only thing that matters eventually in this new reality, but just make sure that you are understanding the reality and the problems and the needs of everyone. And finally, I think it's important to embrace responsible innovation, responsible AI, in the sense that you need to make sure that you put the patient at the center and build everything around that. Sometimes it's difficult because you are just trying to optimize for productivity, for your own success, career, whatever, but eventually what you're building is for patients, and that's what really matters, right? So this would be my take on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to sum up all the things that you have said. Of course, what we see is that AI is going to change education and it's going to change the works in the future. Maybe not now, but it will be here in some years. So we see that when we talk about internet, it gives us information. But when we talk about AI, it gives us knowledge. So this is, when we are, for engineers, you know the difference between information and knowledge and how we process it. And this is important because, for example, a doctor will be not the same without knowledge of technology. I mean, the future, all the sectors should have some knowledge, some basic knowledge of how to use technology, to make it useful. So, of course, the first point I would say that we need this interdisciplinarity, but in the single person, not only just to join forces from one group to another's, but we just have to have this type of mixed profiles, and this will be the ones who will have success in the future, I'm sure of that. Secondly, as you say, you were relating to the idea of investigation. I think that there is a lot of research, and we need a lot of research to have data and to, of course, to give solutions for the well-being of our citizens. But we have to think, when we develop things, we need to think in a real-world impact of the applications we develop, and we need to know how to make them useful. And as I said, we have to know also the governance of the organizations in which this type of systems are being used, because if not, they will finish in a paper without use. So I think that we have to move from this research, and in Europe we have a lot of research. In Spain, of course, we are very good at research, but we need to move to the industry, because if not, industry will come from other places, and we want to have it here and made by, of course, by Europeans. Thirdly, I would say this social dimension. There was a query in which a lot of people was asked about which is your worries just by using AI in medicine, and they say we are worried that the medicine at the end is dehumanized. So this social dimension and the treatments have to be thought in the. We have to think in the citizens, and we need to be sure that we are not just relying everything on the machines. So the machines that not control all of our work. So this point of ethical and social usage of the AI, I think it's essential always for our future generations, that we will be quite used to use AI as a normal thing, but they cannot miss this sphere at all.
Okay, thank you.
So actually, I think this is one of the most important questions we have had in the panel, because younger generations are the ones that are going to actually deploy all what we are developing today. For me, I think all the colleagues have already said that, but I always tell most technical profiles, you have to stay close to the clinicians, you have to understand what you are doing, you have to understand why you are doing that. And to the clinicians, I always try to encourage them to learn about the mathematics and about the algorithmics behind AI. That's very, very important to understand the biases and to understand what is the answer that this is giving us. With internet, looking for something in Google, that was easy to understand what was going on with this search. Nowadays, the answer that a large language model, for instance, gives us is very difficult to understand why it's giving us this answer and which are the potential biases that are behind. So yeah, I think in summary, the world, the future belongs to those that are going to be able to bring together, as Aleida said, in one person, this technical knowledge with this clinical deep clinical understanding of the problems.
Okay. Thank you very much for your thoughts and insight, and thank you.